There's a lot going on this time of year at the Idaho State House. Committee meetings, bill proposals, and key debates that could shape Idaho's future. I'm James Dawson, state government reporter for Boise State Public Radio, and I spend my days from January to April sorting through the action at the legislature so you don't have to. Sign up for my weekly newsletter, Legislative Roundup, and you'll get each week's biggest news and developments from the session delivered straight to your inbox every Monday morning. Sign up for Legislative Roundup at our website, boisestatepublicradio.org.
More Idaho Matters now from the studios of Boise State Public Radio News. I'm Gemma Gaudette. The Lake National Wildlife Refuge is expanding. This marshy landscape east of Pocatello is home to close to 250 kinds of birds, and according to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, it has the largest breeding concentration of sandhill cranes in North America. Well, now the refuge is growing by almost 2,500 acres thanks to the work of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. For 20 years, this group has been quietly conserving and enhancing wildlands all across the country, including more than 720,000 acres right here in Idaho. We invited Jen Doherty, the managing director of mission operations at the foundation, to tell us more. Welcome to the show, Jen.
Thank you so much for having us.
So can you start off by telling us about the foundation? What do you do? What's your mission?
Absolutely. So the Elk Foundation started back in 1984 in Western Montana. So we actually celebrated our 40th anniversary last year, and that was very exciting. We still have our headquarters based in Western Montana, but we work across the country. So of course, in 1984, when we were started, elk numbers were not doing so hot, but they've nearly doubled since then. So we have different challenges now than we had back then, but we have a vision to be the best membership-based big game conservation organization out there. And we operate, as I said, across the country and have worked in Idaho since 1985. I think it's worth saying that we have a lot of members and supporters in Idaho that I'd like to thank, but also that fuel the funding behind the organization. So those local events and banquets that they put on, that funding comes to fruition and fuels conservation work on habitat, protecting big game migration areas, and projects like we're going to talk about today.
So let's talk a little bit more about the Lake National Wildlife Refuge. Can you tell us where it is and exactly how big is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Grays Lake is a tremendous area. And if you go about 30 miles outside of Soda Springs, you're going to find Grays Lake National Wildlife Refuge. It is the single largest hard-stemmed bulrush marsh in North America. So pretty amazing gem right there in eastern Idaho. And what's special about the area for the Elk Foundation is that, we've been working with Idaho Fish and Game, federal and state agencies, private landowners since 1985, really, to look at the Tex Creek Wildlife Management Area all the way down to Georgetown Summit Wildlife Management Area. And the migration that occurs, the movement that occurs by big game like elk, mule deer, moose, etc. So we've been working in that area for a long time, and this project came up, and it's nearly 2,500 acres of upland. So from the shore of the Grays Lake Marsh, upland, up McCoy Creek, that property, was primed for expanding the wildlife refuge and their interest in not only protecting waterfowl, but also upland big game who are migrating through the area and are important to the communities around there and important habitat.
So let's talk about the birds and the animals that call this area home. Tell us about those specific animals.
Yeah, and as I said, the Elk Foundation focuses on elk and other big game, but we certainly protect a lot of other wildlife in doing so. And riparian areas are vital for any wildlife, right? They're also vital for the users of the area. So hunters, people fishing, hiking, bird watching, as you can imagine in this area, or photography. It's just an incredible resource to have in Idaho. And this area hosts calving areas for big game, but also
Hmm.
nesting areas for waterfowl that are passing through. So it's a really neat nexus of you could go there and see elk, mule deer, moose, etc., migrating through the uplands, but also on the marsh itself, you're going to see those sandhill cranes or other wild waterfowl, migrating through.
So you mentioned you were able to protect 2,500 acres of land. Can you talk to us about this? Because my understanding is you actually worked with a private landowner, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we work with private landowners all over the place on various habitat improvements, etc. This landowner in particular wanted our help with protecting their property, conserving it for the future. They were ready to do some of their own family estate planning and had looked at various tools like conservation easements, so voluntary agreements to protect their land and stay on the property, and then ultimately decided they wanted to sell the property and wanted that to be an asset to the public. So the Elk Foundation stepped in at their request and assisted with that real estate transaction. Essentially, we worked with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, who has the ownership and the burden and the excitement of managing this area, this wildlife refuge, who also found shared priorities in protecting this upland area. Migrations is an important element of Department of Interior and USDA's goals, and it fit right in with this wildlife refuge. So between the three of us, the three entities, we were able to get the transaction done in two phases. So we actually protected half of that in 2023, and then at the end here of 2024, we completed the final purchase of the remaining acreage in that 2,500 acre parcel. The parcel itself goes from the shoreline, as I mentioned, up McCoy Creek, so you can actually access the creek. It's very accessible through the public road right there as well.
Hmm.
Just really an asset to the public and wildlife in the area.
Would the land have been lost to development potentially if the foundation had not gotten involved?
Absolutely. The risk is always there. And as we know right now, the turnover, the rate of fragmentation of habitat is unprecedented. And it's important to take action quickly. We are very lucky. I think all of us as the public are lucky that these landowners are conservation minded and they wanted to do the right thing, which meant waiting for a little while too, being patient as we went through the process. The funding came from Department of Interior, the Migratory Bird Fund, and they did have to wait a little while on that. But for those landowners and for the Elk Foundation, that was worth it. We advocated and lobbied for that funding, and were able to get the deal done and save that particular parcel from development. As you can imagine, being an upland area to the wildlife refuge, it would be very desirable for development as far as nice luxury home sites overlooking that beautiful view.
And before I let you go, you have all kinds of projects across the country, from Idaho to Kentucky. Can you give us a quick example of what the foundation is also working on right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. We have worked on over 9 million acres across the country already. And for us, the numbers can be numbing, but it is important and vital that we look at these high priority migration areas and these calving areas for big game habitat. Some of the biggest challenges that wildlife and hunters face right now are that fragmentation of habitat and therefore loss of access. And we are doubling down on those words across the West and partnering with vital partners at private landowners as well as agencies to get the work done to make sure that the most important migration areas are protected. Sometimes that means a transaction like we're talking about today in Gray's Lake, an acquisition of land that goes into the public trust. And sometimes that means converting that habitat to quality habitat so that that wildlife can come back to that area and the distribution of wildlife is appropriate for the area. We're really excited to
Well, I want to
continue that work and fund more of this work across the country.
Well, I am so thankful for you coming on and talking to us about all of these projects that you're doing, in particular the big one here in Idaho. We've been speaking with Jen Doherty. She is the managing director of mission operations at the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, talking about their work expanding the Grays Lake National Wildlife Refuge in eastern Idaho. We will make sure we put more information about the foundation and the refuge on our website, boisestatepublicradio.org. I'm Gemma Gaudette, and this is Idaho Matters.
Whether Boise State Public Radio brings a smile to your day, some inspiration, or a greater connection to Idaho and the world, we're proud to be here with you. Federal funding, about $1.60 per person annually, helps keep these trusted services strong and accessible to everyone in our community. Learn how you can safeguard local public media stations like ours by visiting protectmypublicmedia.org.